And you know what I wish I would have done at some point? Like, not that the high schools we went to had these
Oh, you're
available,
trying to
but
dox us here. Yeah, go on. We're
you
live on the
can really
internet.
you can really dock this specific thing. Some kind of like trying out like radio and things like that. Like trying out. No, because like when I actually when as I got older,
Like in the
and
US, how they have radio, like local
yeah, like
community radio.
student
Yeah,
radio,
yeah, yeah,
community,
yeah.
and like because I've seen what those like the actual education path of that leads to. When I won't get into it, but basically, there's
Yeah,
like
yeah,
radio and TV courses out
yeah,
there,
yeah.
and it's just kind of interesting to see, like that's obviously a lot of people that do podcasts have never had any kind of training in that stuff, but it'd be cool to actually have had some, to try that out.
Oh, now, look at you! You got to go professional. Is this some kind of announcement? All right, we're live.
You've
by the way.
you've seen me host. There's no chance I would ever be a
Is that what you call it?
anything. It's called the Mike Project. Was the Mike Project round
failed
one
experiment,
was
I would
a
call it.
failed experiment. We'll see Mike Project round two. So.
The Mike project was that was a failed experiment.
Had its moments.
It was funny. Like that's always the thing with Mike. It's always funny.
He tried hard.
Did he?
I think
All right,
he did.
we're live. We can start anytime you want.
It's just at some point the Mikeism started to just overwhelm him. He just couldn't control it.
Yeah, it's like a system of chaos that has to work against itself. Like this, he's the opposite of homeostasis. He needs the system to continually either break down or grow, expand. It can never be static. He's like that's Mike in this. I was trying to explain Mike to my wife, and I'm like, it's because I was saying that Swinny and I are assholes for different reasons, but Mike's a dickhead, right? And then there's like an element of Mike that there's certain things that he does. It's really hard to explain. Like for instance, we're about to cover our top 6 games of the year, right? Like our predictions for the nominees, right? And it's sort of just like dials in whatever. But it's like, it's so hard to explain to people who don't know him that it's like, there's not malice in what he's doing. You know what I mean? Like it's just his personality. It's so hard to explain. All right, ready to go when you are? Are you ready?
Cool, let's do it.
3, 2.
Welcome to Big Week in Gaming Podcast, and what do you know, it's been a big week in gaming. I'm your host for this week, Swinny, for episode 104, this Sunday, the 13th of October, 2022. No, November 2022. What am I doing with this date? In this week's show, Doom composer Mick Gordon strikes back at id Software over the Doom Eternal soundtrack. Control 2 is officially announced by Remedy. Nintendo give us a bunch of updates about some cool upcoming indie hits, and we predict the nominees for the Game Awards 2022 Game of the Year Awards. So if you'd like to support the show, love to get you to subscribe on YouTube and or your favorite podcast app. And if you're a mega fan, come join us on the Discord. All the links are in the description below or at bigwigpod.com. I find that very difficult to say. Joining us today, we've got our executive producer, Intergot.
Hello.
And yeah, no Mike, unfortunately, again this week.
What's the strike rate recently?
It's not been great. It's not been great, but as we said last week, he's had some commitments and unfortunately meant that he couldn't be on the show. But he's expressed his regrets, and he has passed along his Game of the Year nominee predictions. We'll get to them when we get to them, but he's made some interesting predictions.
I've got some editorial comments on those. By the way, I love how you're talking about wanting to do like a course in radio to like improve your hosting, and you totally mangled and butchered after that.
For anybody that didn't hear the pre-show thing, I was saying when I was younger, it would have been cool to try that stuff out. Not that I want to go and attempt to do that stuff now, because I knew that. I don't know why I just didn't update the month of October. I must. God, it's closer to Christmas.
You Ron Burgundied yourself.
I know, I did. Now I know how you felt all those weeks of months of years of.
What was the worst one you did to me? Kojima, was it?
No, I misspelled Hidetaki Miyazaki.
Oh yeah, that's even worse.
I think worse. I could. Yeah, I basically and the unfortunate part is like it was the first line of the clip when we created it. So
It subtly sounds racist. And you like butcher like a name that's not like an Anglo, European name.
I know it was unfortunate, but
that was bad.
It's unfortunately Google Sheets, which we use for our run sheet, doesn't, by default doesn't have any kind of, like spell checker. So it wouldn't have helped in that situation, but other situations it might, and it wouldn't help the date situation.
Well, because Swinny and I are both very OCD and creatures of habit and stuff like that. Like I'm very process based, and I think you are as well. And I was like, you know what? It actually makes more sense to not do Google Sheets now. It would actually just make more sense to do Google Docs because we're not driving as much automation. But it's like, there's part of me that feels like, but we've got like so many, we're like psychos. I've got all of these shows listed permanently. So moving over to Google Docs would feel so weird at this point.
Yeah, look, I like the flexibility of being able to quickly, easily move cells around without having to worry about formatting. But I know what you're saying. I know what you're saying. So, but yeah.
Cool. Yeah. A couple of announcements, Winnie. So first, we're going to be moving to YouTube permanently, solidly, exclusively. We're signing an exclusive contract with Google. They're going to pay us big sums to stream over there. But yeah, no, because we currently stream to Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook. I'm not sure if you know all of that, right?
No, I know. Not that I've ever seen it firsthand, but yeah.
And weirdly enough as well, people actually watch it on Twitter and stuff like that. Like I'll go on and go, this is at like 20 views on Twitter. I'm like, who's watching streams on Twitter? It's so strange. People could be doing it right now. Right in. DM us. Yeah, but we're going to simplify things. So we're going to move it all to YouTube. So I think it'll be like, not probably in the next show, but maybe the show after will be exclusively on YouTube. So you're subscribing or following us on Twitch, jump across to YouTube to check us out. And the second announcement, it's a bit of sad news, Swinny, but I'll be ending my unbeaten streak of like shows. So I'll be moving into more of a casual appearance on the shows. I'll definitely jump on when we're doing, like reactions to directs and stuff like that. And maybe just every now and then, like once a month or whenever it is. But no, the daily grind has got me. So we don't have daily grind.
I look forward to the moment where I have done more episodes than you, then I can hold that over your head.
I think there's like 2 episodes.
And at that point, you'll be like, nah, you'll be walking away with your finger up.
Well, you only missed out on one episode, right?
Yeah, so it'll be the first one that you're not on.
We'll draw equal. We'll draw equal. Yeah, that's right. I might need to just start streaming randomly on the channel just to beat you. So yeah, it's been a long run though. It's been like 2 because I'll finish up at the end of the year. So it'll be like 2.5 years or so, something like that, on and off.
Well, I think we started
like August,
July or early August of 2020?
2020.
That's insane.
We started during the pandemic, which is kind of feels like we started before. The whole pandemic has really stretched out time in a really odd way.
Well, it's crazy to think the pandemic is longer than that because that feels newer to me than the show starting for some reason. Even though I know we started the show during it because we're all like stuck at home and not doing much. But
having said that, I do feel like the pandemic is finished. I know that's not like in everyone else's minds, but it's just going to trail out from this point. Unless there's some crazy thing that happens. Hopefully not. Fingers crossed, knock on wood.
Definitely at this point, you just have to walk outside. And that's probably the case in...
I think we outlasted the pandemic.
That's likely the case in the vast majority of countries at this point. I know there are not every country still, but...
But the elephant in the room for me is like, what are you going to do if Mike... Mike continues the streak. Are we gonna have to change the name of the show to Big Fortnite in Gaming, or
we will take stock. We will have a conversation, and we will figure that one out.
Maybe Joe can be enlisted.
Well, we'll see. Joe's waiting in the wings, maybe. So
there you go. Interesting. We might have to have a 4-person layout. Like if you can get Mike to make a 4-person layout.
Nah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's start chatting about some games. So, what have you been
Yes.
up to this week, Intergot?
I've got my normal daily, weekly grind, which is Splatoon. But I was, very important announcement. I've also got this new really cool Splatoon amiibo came through.
The amiibo that you that's the new one, yeah?
Yeah. This one
Yeah,
just
yeah.
came out.
I just had to double check that because I just remember back to our live reaction that you're like, oh no, they wouldn't have new amiibo.
Yeah. Well,
That's
like amiibo is like outlasted way longer than anyone thought it would, right? Like there's at least another amiibo coming out that we don't know of yet, as we covered in the other show. And then also there's at least 4 Smash amiibo, hopefully 5 with Sora, but that hasn't been confirmed. So yeah, amiibo's still got some legs. It's going to be another couple of years. But this character is actually, when I got the amiibo, I was like, oh shit, have they got the 52 Gal, which is the gun that I always use, and it's actually the 72 Gal. So I was like, so close, so close.
a question about amiibo production.
Yeah.
Is there a reason why it takes so long, or more? I guess more specifically, why is there such a big gap between like the Smash ones, for instance? It just seems like an arbitrary amount of time between the Smash DLC amiibo 13 and 14 or something. It's like, couldn't you just get all that stuff up and they release at the same time or not soon after? It just feels like it takes a long time for what are essentially plastic toys with a chip inside. You know?
But like manufacture. Yeah, look, it doesn't explain why some of these things feel like they take 2 years, but it would take at least 6 months just from like maybe 9 months from a standard manufacturing process because it's injection molded, like all this other kind of stuff. And shipping with China is really crazy. Like it can take 2 to 3 months for stuff to ship from China. So
it just feels like you mentioned the other day, that secret amiibo document that you found, and you're like, oh, it could be Sephiroth, and I'm like, man, Sephiroth came out ages ago. It just feels a long ass time.
I think that one, it's maybe harder to explain, and I do wonder if they're not doing all the work that they need to do because they don't want it to leak the characters. Because Nintendo's very secretive about that shit. So, but yeah, going to Splatoon 3, that's what we've been playing. The Splatfest is on this weekend. So cool. I've got my ruler tag, which is maxed out, because you have levels that you can max during the Splatfest.
Is that still the Pokemon Splatfest?
Yes. Okay. And what is the team Squirtle, of course. I'm Squirtle gang. They were winning at halftime, which was cool. I was so glad that happened because what happens at the halfway point of the Splatfest, they say this is the team that's leading. Then with the tricolor Splatfest, so the tricolor mode where it's 3 teams, like it's actually 1 team versus 2 teams, right? I'm not explaining this very well, am I? We've spoken about this mode before, but so what it is it's 4 players from Team Water against 2 players from Team Fire and 2 players from Team Grass, right? So they're the 3 options. But because Water is winning, it's the 4 versus those 2-2. Which I never played as the attack, like the defender, right? So it was quite fun playing that mode. And this time around, it seemed like I was getting into those modes more, which was also really cool. Because last time I'd literally only got to play once, like in the Splatfest, the last Splatfest that we had. Because there's some issues with the mode, obviously. But I really like that mode. I don't know why they don't allow you to play it more often in different circumstances. So yeah, I'm really loving it. Like I gotta say, it won't be my game of the year, but I've had the most fun with Splatoon. It's
that makes sense.
It's kind of my game of the year, but it's not the game of the year. If that makes it's not the game of the year, it's my game of the year. Does that make any sense? I don't know.
Yeah, no, it makes sense.
Yeah.
It makes a lot of sense.
I love it. It's like it is very much still kind of Splatoon 1.75, but that's not a bad thing because Splatoon's a fucking cool game. And they've fixed a lot of problems. Outside of that, Picross, keep playing that. And go on.
Wait, Picross. So I was thinking about this actually, knowing that you're probably going to talk about Picross this week again. At what age? Now, obviously, differs on by depending on the kid, but at what age would a kid actually get into something like Picross? Because there's obviously logic puzzles, right? So there needs to be an understanding of, good understanding of numbers, subtraction, and everything like that. And I'm thinking, because I remember playing Picross when I was in my teens, and I'm thinking like if I had played it when I was like 10 years old, would I have actually been alright at Picross? You know, and I'm like, what? And what's the early stage you reckon that Picross would actually be fine for a kid? You know,
I reckon Picross is one of those games that it would be so varied. There'd be some really cluey 5 to 6 year olds who would figure it out, but honestly, it could go all the way up to like 9 or 10 before they could get it. Because there's a lot of deductive reasoning in Picross. Like it's kind of like, if I put something here, then this couldn't go there, and then this and that, and like you have to flow it through, and you go, well, actually, it can't be that. So then, therefore, I need to go put it here.
And it's pattern recognition in terms of, okay, I remember that style of pattern from when I've done it like 10 other times. You kind of, it's easy to then say, okay, well, I know those aren't the pieces or whatever. So no, it was just like, unlike something like a, you know, like a platformer or, you know,
or Tetris.
It's skill-based game.
Fit it in.
Because it's like almost like muscle memory at some point, but you know, like Picross is not really muscle memory. It's like logic, you know. So
it's kind of funny. I never think of Picross as being a hard game, but it's more like chess versus something like Sudoku, which is more like checkers, I guess. Sudoku is very straightforward because you just look at everything. Everything has to be 1 to 9, every single thing, right?
Yeah.
So you can kind of keep flowing. Sorry,
there's actually some weirdly, I've delved into the world of Sudoku YouTube channels, and like how they do like the impossible Sudokus, the ones that are like, you know, basically they're at that point they're no longer the same game. You know, they have to meet certain patterns within and everything like that. So it's weird to actually sit there and watch someone complete a puzzle like for like an hour, you know, while you're just like having coffee or something.
You know, I was thinking about Picross so much. I was like, man, I feel like I'm gonna make this like a 3D Picross game, because it's like, it's so annoying to me that there aren't any other. This is like 2 3D Picross games basically. Like that's insane to me. It's just a series I feel like just doesn't get the level of love that it really should. Like from puzzle games, like it is my favorite puzzle game. So it just doesn't. I don't feel like it gets that love, and all the variations are really cool. Color Picross, Mega Picross, like they're all It's anyway, but I'm keep on playing. I'm on Picross grind.
Big week in Picross.
Picross and Mevo. I bring all the big topics. Cover analog later in the show. The other one obviously is God of War Ragnarok, which weirdly came out on a Wednesday in Australia, and it kind of really threw me off. Games normally come out on Friday in Australia, and then maybe a Thursday, but very rarely outside of those. Like I'd say, like 9 times out of 10, 8 times out of 10, it's like a Friday. Then maybe 1 time out of 10 Thursday, and then 1 time out of 10 some other day. You know, it could be like Monday even. So I don't know why. I feel like they wanted to maybe make it the 11th, and they didn't want to be dickheads about it with Starfield. Seriously, that's my hypothesis, because there's no reason why they would release it on an unusual day outside of that. That would be my logic, that they wanted to have as much time as they could to release it, but way before Christmas, line it up with the Game Awards, but then they didn't want to look like arseholes by putting it out on the 11th, and it's a smash hit, and everyone's like, oh, you know, Starfield was meant to come out on this day, and then look, God of War, you know what I mean? I don't think they want that vibe, so that's my theory of why they had it on that day. Anyway, it's a cool game. It's like, look, I am not like the biggest lover of God of War 2018. Like, I'm like, this is a really good game. I would never say that's a 10 out of 10 game. Like, not even fucking close in my mind. Now, I know that's sacrilegious to a lot of people, right? And I think this game, already I think it's probably better. Like, and I'm only like 3 to 4 hours in than God of War 2018. But it does use like the foundation. It's more than that. Like, you know, I haven't had anyone say like, oh, this is like God of War 1.5, but it kind of is. Like with a new story and like, you know, obviously evolved story and continuing story, but yeah, it's a funny one. Like, I'm enjoying it. I'm definitely enjoying it, but it's just, it's not like Elden Ring for me. When that came out, started playing it, I'm like, holy shit, this is like enthralling, you know? Like, I was playing Ragnarok, and then the Splatfest started. I'm like, okay, I'm playing the Splatfest, see ya, Ragnarok. And I hadn't even thought about it. I was like, oh yeah, shit, I haven't played that. I need to go back to playing Ragnarok. Totally forgot. Like I was even playing Splatoon a little bit today, and I'm like, there was nothing to do. Like I didn't need to complete anything for the Splatfest, but I was still like, still, I don't know. It's a good game, and I can totally understand why it's reviewed well, but I kind of struggle to understand why the first game, like what was it, like a 93, 94 on Metacritic, I think, the first game?
I mean, I couldn't tell you off the top of my head, but
That just seems so high.
Incredibly high, yeah.
Yeah, I beat that game, and I'm like, okay, like it's an awesome game, but how the hell is this game like a 94 or something like that? But then again, I'm a what's it called, a Nintendo fanboy, right? So people could flip around and go, oh, why do you think that, Breath of the Wild is a whatever,
Yeah.
Yeah, 94. It's 94.
And you said that you got an unfortunate glitch or like a bug in it, didn't it?
So like, and at least I would say, although I'm not playing the version that came on the disc, right? There was a day one patch, but I think like Sony first party games are normally pretty solid. Like I can't attack them for that, right? But I was playing it, and I got up to this bit pretty early in the game, and there was a few other little minor janky things that happened, and I was like, kind of put me out of it a little bit for a second. And the fucking menus suck as well, by the way, but we'll get back to that. But I open this door, and then Atreus, the basically Navi, right? It just fucking tells you everything. Oh, you dopey bastard! You can't solve this puzzle. What's up here, Dad? Look up there, Dad. I'm like, how can I shut this motherfucker up? I want to solve this puzzle myself. Anyway, he just slides along the floor, not moving his legs or anything. Like slides into this position. I'm like, whoa! I took a video of it to send to you guys, and then I'm walking around the room. I'm like, what the fuck? And this little maniac is playing the lute. I'm like, okay, and I'm standing in front of this lute guy. I'm like, do I have to fucking listen to this whole song? Like, I was there for 5 minutes. I'm like, what the fuck is going on here, right? I go inside the house, outside the house. I go around everywhere. I'm like, I'm confused. I'm like fucked up something, right? And I'm like, what the fuck's going on in this game, right? I Google it, and it's like, no, there's a bug for people. It just soft locks you. Or not soft locks is wrong. It's too extreme of a term, but I had to restart from a prior checkpoint to continue the game. I'm like, that's not good.
It reminds me of often if I get a frozen loading screen or something, and it's like, all right, let's play the waiting game. How long do I wait to see if it resolves? And half the time it does resolve itself, but sometimes you after 10 minutes, you're like, I've just got to cut my losses and restart this game and lose whatever progress if I did. But
I grew up with really buggy Windows machines and all that stuff. And I would just quit. Then I turn the computer on and off straight away. I don't give a shit. In my old age, I've just learned to go, okay, I'm just going to let it sit. And I'll walk away, go make a cup of tea or something, come back. I'm like, oh, okay, it's all good again. No, I get you.
Yeah. Well, look, obviously, that stuff will get fixed very quickly
for sure.
in this game,
for sure.
So,
and it's, I'm sure you'll enjoy it when you play it in 5 years' time. But it's really decent. Yeah, I don't want to talk about my predictions quite yet, but I've got very strong views on what I think will happen with this game versus other games in the Game Awards. But we'll cover that in due time, Sweeney. But what have you been playing?
So I just like last week. So last week I was talking a lot about my, my resolution to play some PlayStation exclusive games, specifically 13 console exclusives within this year, and the fact that I completed 2 more last week. So it was Jak and Daxter. No, 3 actually.
Which you really liked. I was thinking about actually playing those games. Yeah,
Ape Escape and Detroit Become Human last week. So I wanted to continue on because I'm like, well, look, it's early November, but I kind of just want to close this resolution off and get in a nice, comfortable position. So I decided to play 2 more games. I only completed 1, so I haven't completed my resolution this week. But the game I completed this week is The Last of Us.
You are a straight up dickhead. You are legit. Okay, this is why you are an asshole. This is why you are an asshole. This is why.
I'm waiting for the explanation.
Because I literally said last week, I'm like, hey, the show's coming out. Why don't we play that game? And, there's this crazy concept of gaming where like it's a little bit communal. People chat about with their mates. They even play with each other cooperatively. I don't know if you've heard of it before, but and you're like, no, not gonna do that. I was just like, what the fuck? Like, don't you have to already play a bunch of PlayStation games? So
Yeah,
this is
look,
why you're the asshole.
it was always in my possibly list, but I didn't think I would probably play it as part of those 13 games. I knew I'd eventually try it out. I bought the game specifically to play it, so... But I'm like, oh, bugger it. I'll just play the game and just shut Into God up. So,
But it's not shutting me up, though.
No, but then I'm like, okay, well, it's like I'll stop him bugging me about playing like one of the best games of all time by playing one of the best games of all time.
And is it one of the best games of all time?
So
don't spoil it, by the way. I haven't played it yet.
I'm not going to spoil the game. Don't worry. I didn't think I'd actually talk too much to it until, maybe you'd play through.
Well, now I've got to play it. I might drop Ragnarok then, but yeah, go on.
That game, look, it is an absolutely phenomenal game.
Oh.
And keeping in mind, so I played the remastered version. I didn't play the part 1 remake or whatever. And just... The games unfortunately start on a back foot with me because the setting and the style of game is not my thing. Like I'm not into like zombie apocalypse kind of stuff.
I thought you might not like it. That's why I'm impressed that you actually liked it.
And the initial gameplay was like, obviously it's a fantastic made game, but it's it's pretty kind of like linear and doesn't it's not very freeform in the opening act of the game or whatever.
Okay.
But once the gameplay starts opening up and allows you a lot more freeform gameplay and systems and stuff, that's when it started really, really hooking me. And naturally over time the story really and the characters start to hook you. But I actually really, really liked it. I can understand why it had the reputation it does and why it was so lauded as one of the best games of all time.
If you had to do a quick Swinny magazine review, what would you give it out of 10? No, half points allowed.
I don't know. I generally score lower than most people, so I'd probably say a 9 out of 10 personally. But I can see why people would score it like a 9.5 or a 10.
But I think if you're getting a 9, especially in Swinny scale, you got to bump that up by half a point at least.
Yeah,
that's a solid fucking game. Would you say that people have to play it if they're a gamer? Like if they're like, I love gaming, it's a must-play game? That's a different way to look at it.
Oh, yeah, I think it's a must-play game for sure, definitely.
Wow. Okay, interesting.
And yeah, like I mentioned it kind of, when we were chatting offline this week, that I can see why playing that game on harder difficulties would also be a much different experience and kind of a cooler experience because it's all about the survivability and limited resources and everything. But yeah, I really, really liked it. So that means I had one game left out of the 13.
By the way, this is also why you're the arsehole, because I was mentioning The Last of Us the other day in another chat that we're having.
I know.
And you didn't mention anything.
I want to talk about it on the show. I wanted to kind of just be a prick and say asshole. I completed it. Yes. But the other game was a game that actually was my
You're a last hole.
My last hole. Was my whole inspiration for this resolution, which was God of War 3. God of War 3 was always the game that, and it just so happened to fall on the week that bloody Ragnarok came out. So I'm sitting there playing one of the older games because I'd always wanted to, like, I'm a massive fan of God of War 1 and 2, the originals on PlayStation 2. Never got a chance to play through God of War 3, so I'm not that far into it, maybe about a quarter of the way through, but I love that old school God of War style, and I definitely, I wanted to complete that trilogy before ever moving on to the 2018 God of War.
The Norse duology.
Yeah, so not complete yet, but look, God of War 3 is a fantastic game. It's the spectacle in that game is just so over the top. It's almost like you're talking about Bayonetta the other week.
Yeah.
God of War 3 is kind of crazy like that as well, just with the gigantic like set pieces and stuff. But yeah, so
I think you would really love God of War, like the new. What do you call it when there's two games in a series? Not sure what it's called.
It's like a soft reboot almost,
Yeah, no, because they were going to make a trilogy. I wish they did, because then you could say the Norse trilogy. But whatever the two games, whatever the term for it is, God of War and God of War Ragnarok, I think you'll really love them actually, because you'll love the setting and then like the gameplay and everything like that.
Yeah, I was also planning to jump back into Steel Rising this week because they released the DLC, but I didn't get a chance, unfortunately, so I'll check that out for next week.
So you've
But
only got to finish God of War 3, and then that's your resolution done. 13 games, right?
Yes,
Yeah, okay.
that'll be the
Yeah,
resolution
okay.
wrapped up.
Nice,
And it's been
nice.
really fun, like playing through a lot of these classic PlayStation, legendary games. Some of them, some of them not so legendary, but it's been interesting to, like, I kind of worked out that, not exactly, but it's been a good expanse of games across the whole PlayStation 1 to PlayStation 5 era, because if you count, for instance, like God of War 3 as a PS3 kind
I
of
would.
representation,
Yeah, no, I would. Definitely.
then I've played
Same as
PS1,
Last of Us.
PS2, PS3, PS4, and PS5.
Yeah.
And there was part of me, it's like, oh, can I work in something like Gravity Rush? And I did play a bit of Gravity Rush. That was like, a Vita game, and like trying to like hit all the aspects. But
You can finally defend your Xbox fanboyism now, because people probably could say, "Have you even played Last of Us?" And you're like, "No." Like, "Oh, you're such a fanboy." Now you can defend yourself better.
now I'm
played
gonna have people being like, "You haven't watched Walking Dead?" It's like, oh, I guess I've got to watch the bloody Walking Dead.
That's still going on. I was actually shocked because Rick Beato, the YouTuber,
Yeah.
he was on Talking Dead recently, right?
Ah, okay, yeah.
And like, I was thinking, wait, I thought that show finished, and I checked it. I'm like, it's still on. I was like, what? It's I think it is finishing up this month, Walking Dead. But that's
the entire thing.
Yeah, after 11 seasons.
But they had like a spin-off show as well, didn't they?
No, they could have movies. They could have TV movies with Rick Grimes.
I just still can't believe that Negan was put into Tekken as a guest character. It's still the craziest thing to me. It's still like, and
I don't know where you're going with that, but that's funny.
You still watch the trailer with like him with Lucille and all this stuff. And these are stuff I've obviously absorbed through internet culture. I've never watched the show, as I said.
Yeah, like that. But I would say it is almost worthwhile watching, like the acting. I can't remember the guy's name. Do you remember the guy's name? I can't remember it. The acting of that dude
off the top of my
who
head, I
plays
can't
Negan
remember.
is freaking amazing. Like the characterization and stuff like that, it's so good. It's fucking crazy.
Well, the last game I played, and I actually just played it today, but I did get through like the first act of it, so not that far. But I played some Return to Monkey Island, a game that I've been wanting to try out for ages. It was just added to Game Pass this week, so I was kind of waiting to see when they were going to, announce it for other consoles other than the Switch, because it launched as a Switch launch exclusive. So yeah, so far I'm really enjoying it. It is such a love letter to the first two games. It does make references beyond that, and there's like a little cool scrapbook that you can go in, and Guybrush kind of talks through the events of some of the games, including like the episodic titles and things like that. But when you get into the game itself, like the areas you like, it's basically recreating some areas from the first couple of games, but it's definitely it's really about those first two games, and it's really awesome. Took a while to get used to the interface. It's not a bad interface, but it's very different to the other games. But it's got some really cool quality of life stuff. So the problem with some of those point and click games is that people get stuck and get frustrated and just have to look stuff up online. So they've got an inbuilt hint mechanic that's optional that you can go to, and that will almost just direct you to where you need to go for a specific kind of objective. And it actually lists like your little mini objectives you need to do in a scrapbook. And, like I didn't play all the episodic titles, but I don't think Monkey Island's ever done that kind of thing. So it's got a lot of quality of life there. And also you can look at past, it's like a dialogue log that you can press to view like the last few conversations you've had, if you need to like just look at something because it went through. Because a lot of the conversations I have in the Monkey Island games, they don't repeat themselves. So I'm really enjoying it. The art style is actually really cool. I think it's obviously that was the big controversial thing about the game, and drew a lot of the online abuse and hate, which is obviously horrible. But what I like the most about the art style is it often zooms in a very Ren and Stimpy way. It will zoom into someone holding like a kebab, a disgusting looking kebab or something, and it's so Ren and Stimpy, but it works so well for the art style. But yeah,
that's
part
such
of me,
a good show, by the way, Ren and Stimpy.
Yeah, but look, part of me still loves probably Monkey Island 3, Curse of Monkey Island, that almost like animated cell 2D cell style. But I really like the art style. But yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what Mike thinks. I know he's been playing it, and he thinks it's possibly a Game of the Year contender. So, but yeah, so that's what I've been playing this week.
Can I take the market against Mike's predictions?
We'll get there. We'll get there.
We'll get there. We're hyping up the section. We're bringing back
Cool.
special segments. All right. Sounds very good. All right. Let's move on to the news. Yes, Winnie?
Yeah, and I think you're going to take this one away. We're talking about Doom Eternal OST.
We are. So the controversy surrounding Doom Eternal's much maligned official original soundtrack reignited this week with composer and Australian Mick Gordon officially responding to Marty Stratton's open letter on Reddit on the matter 2 years ago. So one thing I just wanted to quickly frame up is just the actual facts. The facts. These are not disputed. So number one, Doom Eternal was announced at E3 2018. The first gameplay footage was unveiled at QuakeCon 2018. At E3 2019, it was announced that there would be a collector's edition where they were taking pre-orders straight away, and that would include a Mick Gordon OST on launch. Fourth, the original scheduled date for Doom Eternal was November 22, 2019. That got pushed back to March 20th, 2020. And the OST didn't come out at launch. It actually came out on April 19, 2020. So almost a month later. The other things are that the Switch release got multiple delays and released about a year later. And objectively, you can look at the waveforms of the dumped OST and see that there's very limited dynamic range, which is not necessarily consistent with anything that Mick Gordon has published as an OST before. I think these are all like facts. Like you can't dispute any of these. And then I think pretty much everything else, there are receipts, there is speculation, there's stipulations, there's opinion, there's some truth, there's some half truths, I'm guessing, but it's a pretty ugly situation, Swinny. But so maybe like drilling into some of the actual sort of open letter that Marty Stratton posted, and we're not going to go through all of this because this will take like hours. And
this was the original one from like 2 years ago, to be clear. But we want to cover it to provide context.
Yeah,
because it's very important.
And so there were like right at this moment, because I remember it so clearly. I was super excited about Doom Eternal, huge fan of Doom 2016, and like Mick Gordon's work, like to actually, because the Doom music was super iconic, and like it would have been a massive challenge to go, okay, I'm going to make music for Doom, like a reboot of Doom. Like, honestly, I would just wither under that pressure. But I think what Mick Gordon pulled together, I think almost universally was loved, right? Like the strong consensus is awesome music, right? And for all accounts, the Doom Eternal music that's in game, everyone loves it, right? But the OST, lots of drama around it. And, I'm not even pointing at who I think is to blame or not to blame or how much or whatever, right? But there was a lot of heat, and there was a couple of comments on social media from Mick Gordon. Like there was one post from a user where they were basically saying, hey, what's up with what's the music? It's a bit like all over the place. And then Mick Gordon sort of shot back on Twitter along the lines of, hey, you'll be able to tell which tracks I mixed. Like there was about a dozen tracks that I mixed. You'll be able to tell which ones I did. Tracks like X and Y. So, like, to be fair, I think that's a little bit of a, hey, not my problem. I did, like, my stuff was all right, and the disaster's over at id, which may be fair, but that's, like, I do think that's positioned fairly clearly from mixed comments. And then I think, you go through all this letter that Marty Stratton posted, like, 100% the takeaway is, like, it's Mick's fault. Like, he was very much defending Chad, who was their like lead audio engineer, like the dude who basically made sure that bringing the music into the game at the right time, the music, sound effects, etc. Like they both have different positions on like, how the soundtrack came to be. And like Mick goes through like the nth level of detail on that. But I think you can, the strong takeaway for me, and I think everyone would agree, like, the majority would agree that he is pretty much blaming Mick. Like, if you go through this, right? The open letter from Marty Stratton. And at that point, the whole Doom subreddit just, like, basically went against Mick from this point on. And Mick didn't say anything, so everyone took it as like, well, this has got to be true.
Yeah, and that post is locked. So if you go through on that original Reddit post from Marty Stratton 2 years ago, you'll see that community narrative is very much what you're saying.
Yeah.
Like there's some people that are kind of trying to pick it apart and going, wait a second, but the fact that it's locked, so you don't see people coming to it with the recent, stuff we'll cover with Mick Gordon's response and going back to old posts and, oh, you were wrong about this. It's all like a lot of those people are just like, oh, like didn't deliver and all this stuff. It's almost like a time capsule of what the community felt at the time if you read the comments in that post. So
yeah, and I have noticed that people have either like deleted their whole accounts because that does delete tweets. Delete posts on Reddit. But yeah, you go through these. I don't want to go through too many of these actually because it's not like something I vetted.
Yeah.
But yeah, totally. I remember it at the time because I love Mick's work, Killer Instinct, like a whole bunch of other stuff that he's done, and it just felt like we only had one side of the story. Right, that was my overwhelming feeling because he really didn't talk about it. He was on like lots of interviews, like long form podcasts, Mick, and I would always listen to them to just see whatever snippets he would mention, and he was really tight lipped about the whole thing. But it definitely disparaged his character. If these things are true that Marty Stratton's putting forward, and lots of stuff like they had agreed in January that they were gonna get it done by April and everything like that. Then, as we said the other day, and I remember when this was published, I like messaged you guys. I was like, holy shit. Like, look at this thing. So I was like, fuck it. I got to read this whole thing. And it's like about an hour to read it. Right. And like literally this statement from Mick is like responding to Doom Eternal. And he does frame it as like, I'm not trying to attack anyone here. I'm just defending myself. I'm defending my character, my personality, my professional reputation. And this shit is like pretty explosive. Right. And I'll just say one of the outcomes is like, as I was saying about the whole kind of community and, id and the sort of, Doom Eternal and Doom subreddit, they've like completely turned on as off the back of this now, Marty, like completely turned on him. Right. So they're going to have to address this in some ways, but like how are they going to do that?
And Mick's big response, which is like 14,000 words, covers almost his entire experience with the composing the game alongside the actual soundtrack part of it, because they're two very different kind of like bodies of work that he's talking about.
Yeah,
the actual audio for the game and then the actual official soundtrack. But yeah, I actually did end up reading it just earlier because I'd read like he kind of has like a good summary of the actual refuting the original statements from the Reddit post at the end, but then if you go back and read the full thing, it's much more like personal tone. And it, like, as I said, like talking about the actual game itself and composing that's not talked about really at all in that original Reddit thing. So it's kind of doesn't come up in that summary, but it's wild. It's wild to read through. To be honest.
Yeah, I agree. And I would actually, like, if you have any interest in this, I'd highly recommend people read it. Like, actually read what he's saying in full. Like, as you said, he's like got a super exact summary at the start. And then, because this is very legal brief. This is what you do in a legal brief. This is how you do it. Like, what's the statement of claim at the start? Then the full detail. And then at the end, you summarize the claim. It's like, this is literally... I was chatting to my wife who's a lawyer. It's like about the structure of it as well. It's like it's literally written like a defamation case, right?
Yeah, because it repeats things, but it repeats things in a way that a legal case would about the summarizing, So.
But I think his thing at the end is actually like the easiest summary to go through. So, and like we've tried to be clear around like this is his statement on it, but he does provide screenshots. He does provide a lot of evidence. Always on his side, obviously. I don't think he's ever posted something like, oh, fuck this up or I delayed or right. But so going through, number one, he's saying like the OST is poorly managed. I mean, that's his view of it, right? His statement is that he did not know the OST was going to come out, number one. It was going to happen. And, he basically found out from it a bit like the OST was coming after the announcement at E3 2019.
With his name attached to it.
Yeah, exactly. Now, straight off the bat, this is going to be so easy to disprove if he's lying about this, Mick Gordon, right? So pretty insane claim if he doesn't have receipts to back it up, right? Because they will be able to find an email and go, yeah, you spoke about the OST, like before E3 2019, right? So that's one statement that he's made. The other one is that the OST was delayed before he was even under contract for it. So like with the game when it came out versus when he actually got the document, like at least from his like claim and his screenshots on DocuSign of when it actually got signed off, you know, they delayed it and then he'd signed it afterwards. So he was sort of, he only really had an agreement, like according to him, that was like after the actual game was about to get released, and you know, well too late for when like something like this should have been arranged, right?
Yeah, because he really stresses, and he brings it up multiple times, about the concept of doing work without a contract.
Yeah.
And he's basically, apparently, he states he was owed for past work on an unrelated game, and the agreement, because he went directly to Bethesda bypassing Marty Stratton about it, the contract for this OST would kind of bundle in what he was owed in the past. So I can see why that would delay contracts, because that's a pretty weird legal situation. But yeah, I think he's saying, yeah, he didn't get it until March 18th, which is insane. If that's true, that is insane.
Again, it's like another thing that they will actually be able to, if it's not true, be able to prove it's a lie of what he's saying. But if it is true, the fact that he signed the contract on March 18th and the game came out 2 days later, right? And it was meant to launch with the OST, the collector's edition, is fucking insane if it's true, right? Like, Bethesda would not have a leg to stand on if they can't somehow refute that statement, right? The other one is like the OST contract proves Marty's claims are false. So like there's some talk in the Reddit post around, hey, we had a chat to Mick in January. I kind of think this is like a bit of a stretch. Like the thing is, again, I haven't seen all the stuff on Marty's side of the fence. Like maybe there are emails or messages, or maybe there's implication or an understanding that he's going to do an OST. Maybe he doesn't have a full contract, but maybe there's an expectation from id that, don't worry, we'll sort that out. Like we'll get this all locked in, right? I'm kind of a bit like, okay, this is his position on it. I get it. The other one is that, you know, id had control, creative control. Okay, like that's the contract that he signed. That's the way it is, right? He was told he's going to produce 12 songs, and they ended up going out with like, I can't remember the exact number, but it was around 50 to 60 tracks.
Yeah.
So they obviously had to create a lot of other music from the game, which Mick wasn't doing himself. And I don't know about you, but reading this, if you read the verbatim, right, you read everything that Mick says, I think it's almost like the biggest thing he's trying to make clear is like, I didn't do those shitty tracks, and I didn't want my name anywhere near those shitty tracks, and I wish they were never created. Like, that's one of the biggest things that I get from this whole thing. It's like, and that he's actually really passionate about like trying to get something out the door, right? And he's really passionate about Doom and the IP and everything like that. What are the other key ones? This whole payment thing is so, it happens a lot in every industry, and I think it's like disgusting, honestly. I think if you promise that you're going to do something and you sign a contract with someone, I think it's disgusting when companies leverage their position in the market. I definitely can't talk too much about this, but I know some really large companies in Australia that literally don't pay people, and I'm like, they have all the power and the money in the world to pay people, and it's like a systemic thing where they don't pay people, and it's fucking bullshit.
Yeah, I've witnessed that before. You know, it's a power play. You know, it's about, we hold the power in this relationship, in this contract. And it absolutely sucks because, you know, like in the wider statement, when he talks about the issues he had during the game's composition, he talks a lot about payment there as well, and he claimed that, you know, he wasn't paid for like 11 months and stuff. And there's a lot of stuff you can work through. As he said, there's different sides on all this, but as he said, like I've witnessed that before, where it's like it can get really messy, that stuff.
Yeah,
especially when you're dealing with contractors, you know.
And it just seems like, honestly, just disgusting, because it's like, it's like you should not be able to legally do that kind of shit. Like you should be able to be held in court, like against those contracts. But this is the thing about contracts. Contracts are only useful as much as you enforce them. So the other one is like, you know, they're sort of saying they've had to rescue this OST at the last minute. But funny enough, that Mick was going through the metadata of what he was supplied and was able to prove that some of these files were created much earlier. So seemingly looking to track for a November release date, which was the original date that was meant to be. So he's sort of pushing back and going, well, this is not true. This is sort of like, look, I again, like on those kind of things, I just think, well, they're just looking for backups if it's not working out with Mick, right? In their minds, I can kind of understand that. Yeah, like he's going on about like the editing and he's saying it's really shit. I think, like, honestly, you can look at all of Mick's work and stuff that he's mastered and then look at the waveforms of what got released and just know it's not his work. I don't even think anyone's disputing that, right? I think this is almost getting a bit personal, this shit, where he's just like banging on about how shit the edits are and the transitions and out of sync and all this other kind of stuff. It's like, okay, yeah, they're not great. Like, I don't think anyone's really doubting that. Yeah, it's talking about that again. Them working together, I mean, they're not going to work together anymore. Like, I don't think that's like too shocking. And then, yeah, it seemed like they also had a falling out over, all right, there's getting a lot of heat with the OST. Let's figure out what we're going to do.
Yeah.
And then he felt like he was betrayed. His statement is that they agreed that they're going to come up with something, some joint statement that they can post together. And then a couple of days later, Marty posted that thing on Reddit. And this is where I feel like there's so much of this stuff. I would almost go so far as to say, I'd say it's 95% it's true, right? Like what he's saying. I think like my biggest problem with this whole statement is there's a lot of times where it gets very personal and very, like, he feels like an ex that's like being dumped and he's like shitty about the situation. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think this was, obviously there's a legal component for it.
Potentially. We don't know about it yet.
Well, as in, like, he's saying things in a legal way, right? That's what I meant by that.
Yes.
But to me, the other thing is almost like the airing of grievances, right? He hasn't been able to, and I believe when he says in there that how much it affected him personally, and how much it affected his family, and it's the first chance he's had to really share how that is, and I guess, like, that's why you can feel the emotion as much as it's worded in a way that, like, is very technical in some ways, but it is also like very personal and emotional, especially in that wider statement. When he gets that refuting the claims, it's more like down to business. But I guess I don't know if there's any more context or if you want to.
No, I just wanted to sort of like frame the bigger stuff. But yeah, and then sort of get your thoughts overall. What like, it's also what's next? Like what could happen? What should happen? How does this affect id, right? Because we don't even know what their next game is.
Yeah, he talks in the statement about the fact that he claims that they used almost like double the amount of work than he was paid for. So I think the next step is almost, okay, what are the potential repercussions, or what is, will he ever get that money for that, basically saying, okay, he was to deliver X amount of work and they ended up using all his rejected and stuff as part of their, like, which that part is easily proven because he says that, not only is in the game, but also that stuff was used as part of marketing materials and trailers. But I think that, and he brings up, and doesn't really go anywhere with it, but he brings up the Microsoft acquisition. It's such a small amount of thing for them to basically close that off if there's an issue. If this causes a wider issue and there's a PR nightmare, they could step in to say, look, we just want this to be over, I could see that possibly being a next thing for that.
Yeah, look, I think, the unpaid minutes. So I didn't know this. Like, that was a really interesting part about it. We haven't spoken about it, but because he didn't really have it in the summary, but it to me was really interesting that I didn't realize that with music in games, they contract for minutes and then they have a per minute rate. That's how it works. So he was contracted for 142 minutes and then they ended up using 286 minutes and 1 second of his work, right? Because they can track all this stuff.
Yeah, and this is for the game. It's
for the game,
nothing
for Doom
to do with the
Eternal.
official soundtrack.
For Doom Eternal, right? And so it's like 100. It's like double. So 144 minutes that's not paid for. 142 that was paid. So he did get paid for that amount, but not the 144. And there was a provision in his contract, as he spoke about it, that if you have any extra minutes versus the contractor minutes, there will be provisions to be able to get paid for those. That's like a slam. If he took Microsoft to court, he'll win. Like it's not, because you can get it in the game. You go, well, there's more minutes in the game than, so that's like, to me, like that's going to be a piece of piss to get that right. The thing that's so interesting to me now is like, how much stuff can they disprove of what he's saying? Because this is his side of the story again. There's some stuff where I think it is like they're fucked up a bit, right? And I don't think they'll be able to get out of, like the contracting at the last minute. Like it's such a bizarre, like if Mick is like lying about that, he's going to get like destroyed. If they go, well, here's a contract from 2018 for the OST, right? Like, or we'll have provisions to discuss an OST or whatever. You know what I mean? Like whatever it is. If it's anything like that, I think he's gonna get Helena tailored if he does that shit, right? But the ones that I'm like really interested in more so is the whole kind of like super supportive community for Doom, id, where they're at right now, everything. Like, I know you could say maybe it's not real, but I feel like there's a very negative energy towards id now. And Marty Stratton's the head of the studio now. And what do you do with that? Like, what? Like, it's like, to me, that's more what I'd be thinking if I was in Microsoft. It's like, fuck, what are we meant to do here? Like, how do we fix this problem? And can Marty stay? Honestly, like, that's where I think it's at. I kind of default to yes, but like, I don't know. Mick doesn't seem to be. I'm a very business person in the end of the day. Like, you know, if they were like, okay, we'll delete the post and we'll post something that's sort of a bit like this fault on both sides, rah, 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 whatever, right? And here's like a 7-figure settlement. I'm like, all right, let's just get on with it. I'll get on with my life, right? But he seems like a very passionate guy and a very like driven by personal motivations, not business motivations for certain things. Like, for instance, you know, with this OST thing, when I was reading through it, I was thinking the opposite of what he's thinking. I'm like, hey, you got to pay me freaking 10 times the amount now. Because you've announced this OST with my name on it. I'm going to say no. Do a better deal with me, dude. Like, you're pissing me off all the way through development. Like, if it's true, his statements that, like, they kind of dicked him around so much and he had, like, a nightmare development cycle, then they did this OST without having a contract with him. I'm like, dude, you haven't got a contract with me. I'm not going to do that. You've showed your hand. You're fucked now.
Well, I think that, and I don't want to get the timeline too incorrect with this, but or incorrect at all. But he does talk about feeling completely without power because they hadn't paid him yet, like during that first 11 months or whatever.
But that's his power.
No, but that's on. But I'm saying that he felt that if he walked away from the project, he might not get paid, and he's like, I literally don't have any income right now. So I wonder if part of that is him feeling that he didn't have that leverage, which you'd normally expect to have leverage in that situation, you know. So
yeah, but I think this is where I like, and I really have so much respect for this guy, Mick Gordon. Right, I've like literally watched hours of interviews with him. I really think he's a really cool like talent, but he needs to get a better business manager. Because seriously, I was advising him. I'd be like, dude, like, there's 0% chance we're going to do an OST until they resolve all of these issues and they pay you a lot more. And like, oh, wait, they haven't paid you for another one that you've done? That's separate. That's just, you pay me for that. Not combining shift. No way I'd fucking ever do that in a million years. Right? Because he had all the power at that point. As soon as you lose power in business, they abuse you. And like, that's where I know what you're talking about, that he felt like that, but I was like, it's kind of the opposite. Like, he had all the power. He gave all the power up too easily. That's why he was almost like, I felt he was a bit naive in how he was writing. There's one part of his Medium post where he's saying, you know, oh, the Bethesda people were so easy to deal with. And they're just like, yeah, sign this. Of course they are, because they're fucking looking at it going, holy shit, this is a disaster. And this guy just wants to sign some contract and not put us over a barrel. It's like, oh yeah, Mick, what's your rate? Oh yeah, we'll just use the rate that we're using on Doom Eternal. Oh yeah, cool. Well, yeah, sign this off. Oh, we didn't pay you in the past. Oh yeah, just combine that in. And then I'm like, of course, you idiot. Like, of course they're like excited about that because you've got all the leverage at that point in time. And he acts like he has none. So, yeah, it's a really bad story, man. And I haven't played Doom Eternal yet. And I'm almost like, it's going to be almost hard for me to. I feel like I need to give it like a year to play Doom Eternal because it's too raw and fresh.
I think the final thing from me on this is that, what my, I guess, stance is on this whole situation. So if I was just talking from the heart, I read both those statements and I look at the receipts. Now, obviously, Marty Stratton doesn't have the luxury of knowing that big response was going to be coming. So he didn't have his own receipts on his side and everything. But, I look at Mick Gordon's case and situation. I'm like, man, like they screwed this dude over, right? In my heart, right? Like he, as you said, probably 95%. It's like, I believe that. But the other part of me, and I guess you were kind of talking about this a bit as well, is the whole court of public opinion about this. We've just gone through this with Helena Taylor for Bayonetta, and obviously we know how that played out.
Yeah.
God, Mick, because obviously he's been preparing this for a long time. Mick must have seen that play out and been like, "Thank God I've got receipts."
He's about to press submit. No, all I can imagine is it'd be funny to make a video on this. He's made like this shitty post on Medium or Twitter. And he was about to send it, and then Helena Taylor thing blew up, and he's like, okay, I might need to prove more of this stuff. I'm going to write an article.
But that whole court of public opinion thing is, look at the facts, people. Wait for the facts to come out as well, because I've seen so many YouTube response videos come out from people that I'm normally...
After the Helena Taylor thing, dude, as well.
Right after this post went up, just being like, he needs justice, blah, blah, blah. And as I said, in my heart, I understand, but wait for everything to see where it all lands, right? Because, as you said, there's always two sides. As much as, I do believe a lot of what he said, just wait to see where everything plays out, because I think, jumping to conclusions is just such a side effect of our society at the moment. It's really unfortunate, so.
Yeah. And it's honestly one thing I'm proud about the show that we do. We never do that shit. Then it's not as popular, right? Because you're not as explosive. Like we're a little bit more like the voice of reason. But I actually am proud about that, because people, they I've seen a lot of people as well that I have respect for that are just almost, especially after the Helena Taylor stuff, blindly looking at the situation and going, oh, I always knew Mick was hard done by and all this other bullshit, right? To me, it's like, you've also just got to think about the common sense logic of the situation. Bayonetta 3, right? Just if you lay it out and you go, okay, so you've got one voice actor who is saying that she's not getting paid correctly. So who have they got to replace her? Some cheap person off the street, obviously, because they're worried about money. Oh no, one of the most expensive and lauded fucking voice actors of all time. That shit just doesn't add up and make sense, right? So park that, right? With this Mick situation, you can, the thing is that they made a game together. So he made Doom 2016 with id, and Marty was leading that as well, right? A successful OST, successful game, right? This game, Doom Eternal, successful game delayed, right? Terrible OST, right? Same people all playing in the same field. So just fundamentally, I can't imagine a situation where there is 0% of this coming from Mick, right? It's all the same people involved. It's the same medium. And you're dealing with a guy who's you can tell his passion. It's oozing from the post that he's posting, right? And we don't know all the ins and outs. We don't know if he's just oh shit, I've done something amazing with Doom, which I think, really elevated his career. And, we don't know the personal journey he went through of and this is just me purely speculating, but, oh, hey, how am I going to top this? How am I going to go to another level with this? Right? All these other things that people can go through. And I can accept there's a world where maybe it was Mick who was very difficult. Maybe he was really hard to work with and all these kind of things, right? But I think where this is different from the Helena Taylor stuff is that Mick has delivered in the past, right? They've made good things together. And I think he's got very explicit details that you can't really wiggle around that will be completely binary because he's framed it in that way. So he's actually put himself into a spot where he will be more fucked than Helena Taylor was when she was kind of being ambiguous with what she's saying. She could still defend that, I think, but she was being super ambiguous and being deceptive, I would say, right? Whereas he's just like flat out saying, I did not have a contract until this date. That's when the contract
Yep.
got signed. Like that is black and white, right? And like I was contracted this many minutes and I got paid for this many. Black and white. Like all these things are just like there's no wiggle room, and he's got screenshots and everything. So ultimately, yeah, my heart is saying like is a bit on Mick in terms of probably working with him and perfectionism and like what he was going to deliver. But it sounded like Doom was a bit of a mess to get it out the door. They were wanting to launch with Switch version. It came like a year late. Like, so obviously the organization was all fucking out of whack. And honestly, as much as music's important, some kind of soundtrack that's going to get like sent out to people, it's probably the last thing that's on your mind. If you're like worrying about, is the game going to be fucking good? Is it going to review well? Is it going to work? How many bugs? Do you know what I mean? Like a soundtrack, I'm just like, it's fucking soundtrack. Who gives a shit about a soundtrack ultimately in the end of the day, in that grand scheme of things? So, yeah. And yeah, just getting back to the court of public opinion, I can't really see how it's going to swing against Mick. Because I feel like the smart thing that he's done by posting this publicly is they're going to go into some kind of legal discussion now. They're already in it, right? They're in it right now.
Well, they were in legal discussions around the whole possible, according to Mick, the settlement offer and so like.
Yeah.
So that stuff was wild as well that he covers. But,
Yeah, and I mean, like that's that's escalated to another level now with the public statements, because now they're dealing with the guy who's really damaged their studio. So, and whether maybe it's justified, maybe they are the reason why it's damaged, but Microsoft just looks at this as like, okay, this is one of our studio that's like one of the crown jewels of our platform, and this guy's basically turned all the hardcore people against us.
You know who's probably really happy about this whole situation?
Who?
Is the developers of Atomic Heart, which Mick has done the soundtrack for, because now that game is coming out, you know, not that far away. And now he's gone from having shamed, you know, composer Mick Gordon to, you know, redeemed Mick Gordon as being the composer of Atomic Heart.
Yeah,
So,
Feb 21, 2023. I mean, like, and also, by the way, dude, is that like, we can't also forget that that's coming out, you know, Mick would be benefiting from any publicity about that game. And he hasn't responded to this post for like 2 years. And he just so happens to respond to it just before, you know, the PR cycle starts on the game.
The spicy conspiracy theory to wrap this up.
No, but dude, like, this is again the Helena Taylor stuff. You got to look at the whole situation and go, there's always more going on than what people. There's no incentive for him to go, yeah, I was really difficult and I went through a lot, and you know, I was trying to top myself and I didn't know how, and I was rejecting some of the music. Do you know what I mean? Like, we don't know these conversations. Like, yeah. Also, he mentions Marty's name like 176 times in the Medium post, which I think is a bit psycho. But
176, Jesus.
yeah. All right. Well, I think we've covered that. I don't think we'll hear much more from it, honestly, because it's going to be all legal stuff from now on.
We'll see. We'll probably get an update in like 7 months or something. You know,
Yeah,
something.
exactly.
All right. Well, the next story. So we have official confirmation from Remedy Entertainment that they're making a direct sequel to Control. So in July last year, we covered it on the show. Remedy announced a number of new titles set in the Control universe. And we focused at the time, because it was what they were focusing on a co-op title that's like a 4-player co-op game called, it's like codenamed Project Condor. But they did say at the time that a bigger budget Control game is coming that will expand the Control franchise. So this week they revealed that title, which is Control 2, which was formerly known as Project Heron, but I don't think we knew that project name back then. But it will be co-developed and co-published by both Remedy and 505 Games. So very interesting terminology there, co-developed. Remedy will self-publish the game on PC. 505 Games will publish on consoles. It's coming to PC, PS5, and Xbox Series consoles, built on their own Northlight engine, which we knew. So, yeah, basically just a confirmation of what we knew was likely to happen. But it's great, you know. Obviously, Control's a very well-beloved game, and I think this news definitely got a lot more headlines than their post last year about this stuff. So,
yeah, no, for sure. I think Control 2 really has a good opportunity to be a mega hit, Because I think Control 1 was like not quite a cult hit, but do you know what I mean by that? It's almost like I'm like blanking on a game where it's just like the first one comes out and it does well, but it's almost like sets them up for the second one to be big.
Well, it had a journey. So you had, the critics were loving it and everything and probably didn't set the world on fire sales-wise, but then they started putting it out on Game Pass and PS Plus and all these. And so a lot more people got their chance to actually try it out. So I think the chance for this to be a much bigger game is there, 100%. So
Yeah, don't confer this level of like greatness, but the example in my mind is something like Demon Souls, where it's like,
I can see it.
and it's a slow burner, and then it kind of word gets around, and it's like, no, this is a really fucking good game, right? And then Dark Souls comes out later, and it's like, okay, yeah, pay attention, and then a bunch of people play that, or whatever. It's probably quite similar to that.
The marketing budget for Control 2 is going to be much bigger than the marketing budget for Control 1.
But dude, even the development budget of Control 1 is insanely like small. Like it's almost like very old school in terms of like the money they spent on making that game and how much it made. So
they actually announced the initial development budget. I didn't write it down. So they've got an actual PR, like a press release on Remedy's website that talks about this. So they actually say, they talk about the deal with 505 Games and everything there, and they clarify, Remedy still owns the IP for Control. So, but it's interesting. So, we had last December them announce Alan Wake 2.
Yes.
So they've got these two sequels to these two, almost sleeper hits in a way. Alan Wake was pretty popular, but I'd still kind of, like, compared to like other massive franchises, but they've got these sequels on the way. I could see them, they've already, connected the universes in some way, in some form. So it'd be interesting to see with the fact that they've got that, the benefit of hindsight now that they may find a way to work those sequels into each other as well. But that's too, like, they've got so many projects in the works. It's kind of wild. Kind
of bizarre, to be honest. Like, how many? I don't know what the hell they're doing because they're pretty small studios.
They've got 290 employees according to their somewhere. I found it anyway. So yeah, and they also it's related. They did their financial reporting, and Alan Wake Remastered didn't really sell that well. So that's really unfortunate, but. So many people didn't even know that thing existed. So
yeah, the way they marketed and released that, and the Switch port was terrible by all accounts. Which, very like few bad signs in that way, right? Like they really mismanaged the release of that game. That game is like awesome. I only played it recently, Alan Wake, and I don't know what version it would have been because it was like on PC. Which I think is slightly remastered version from the original OG 360 release. But that game also just quite doesn't fit like a remaster, honestly, like that quickly. Like, I think that's almost more of a Resident Evil type game where you want a lot of time to pass, then you can remake it. Like, yeah, remastering that game to me didn't really make a lot of sense. I wasn't even excited about looking at it, right? Because it's like, the original game was very stylized and it was very cool the way it was. But no, I'm really excited about this. Like, only a recent fan of like Sam Lake and Remedy and just what they're doing there. And just anything that's weird is always fun, and it is very weird. I need to go back to Control. It's definitely a game. It sounds so dumb what I'm about to say, but it just feels more like a console game to me though. Like I've been playing it on PC and it doesn't feel like a PC game, if that makes any sense.
No, I feel that. And look, I might go back to it. Like the world, the whole setting, and the vibe is so good, and it's obviously riffing on the whole SCP kind of like crazy, like weird anomalies and things like that. But I think the gameplay for me wasn't like it was good. It was really, really solid. I mean that in a positive light, but I think that was the thing that was holding me back from like really getting hooked on the game.
Yeah.
But I can see where, like they can really improve that stuff for me and for number 2.
Yeah,
but obviously people love the first game. So.
Yeah, no, sweet.
All right, well, we've got a bunch of other news. So Nintendo held an Indie World Showcase presentation this week. And honestly, a bunch of cool news, but it's pretty much all release date news. But for games that, I'm some of us are really looking forward to and that people were anticipating. So
Can we skip the first one, make it last?
you can make that last if you want.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just thought it would just be easy to bundle them all in this little segment and cover as part of that, this indie world news. So the first one is that Rogue Legacy 2 is now available for Switch. So it dropped, that news dropped in the presentation. So very, very highly rated game, one of the highest rated games of the year, according to Metacritic. I am a fan of the first game. I never tried Rogue Legacy 2, but now you can play it on Switch if you're interested. We have Inscription, so a really popular playing game from last year. So that's coming to Switch on 1st of December. And that feels like a really good game for Switch, just the fit of it, So
the problem with the Switch now is like first party games, I just buy them if there's something that I'm interested in, right? I don't even bother waiting for reviews or anything, right? Because I kind of know what I'm going to get, right? But these type of games, like Inscription, I'm like, I just have to wait until it comes out, then listen to what people say. It's like Alan Wake Remastered. It's like, that's a game that I may pick up one day, right? Like if it's kind of an LA Noire style release, and that's a really decent game to play on the Switch. And Alan Wake Remastered supposedly is terrible. And Inscription is a bit like that. It's like, I'm sure it's going to play well, but I can't guarantee it, right? But if it plays well, I actually think I'll pick it up on the Switch.
Well, you don't have to wait that long. So it's 1st of December.
A couple of weeks.
We have a release date for Tales of Symphonia Remastered, which I'm looking forward to as much as it is not a great remaster by all accounts, the fact that it's running at 30 frames and whatnot. But that is coming on the 16th of February 2023, and that's basically coming to every platform. Now, a game that I have always had an eye on, as much as I'm not a big horror fan, but World of Horror. So World of Horror is a very Junji Ito inspired kind of like crazy, almost like detective style visual novel. But it's when I say visual novel, it's really undercutting it. But it's kind of like you're moving between scenes and really crazy stuff, awesome visual style. That's been in early access since February 2020. So they just announced that it's coming essentially mid next year for all platforms as well, except Xbox, unfortunately. So, but World of Horror. So yeah, I think it's an interesting game to throw in a Nintendo presentation because it's definitely pretty terrifying at times. And the last game that I was going to mention, obviously you'll close it off with the one you're looking forward to, is WrestleQuest. So we talked about this on the show. WrestleQuest is the RPG wrestling game that's really cool. So we got a release date that's coming in May next year for all platforms.
Very cool. And the game that I usually mention in these indie directs when we were streaming them, this one was at 4 a.m. So I actually saw it and I'm like, I wonder if the guys want to check it out. And then I saw it was going to be 4 a.m. our time. I was like, no, I'm not going to be streaming that. And I almost every single time say, I want this game to come out, and it's not what is it, Silk Song? What I'm going to mention is Sports Story by Brisbane developer Sidebar Games. They released Golf Story pretty much at the launch with the Switch, and I love that game. And they announced Sports Story like 3 years ago, I think, and it was kind of almost like, here's Sports Story, not coming soon, but didn't have a vibe of like, this is just a teaser, right? It looked pretty far developed. Anyway, 3 years later, very Metroid Prime 4-ish, like, we're still waiting for it. But now, out of the blue, they're like, and this is coming in December. We don't know when in December, but
yeah, it's really weird.
December at least.
It's just like December, but I guess that gives them some wiggle room as an indie developers. But okay, we're not ready to launch on the 3rd of December, whatever, a random date. We need an extra week or something. But
I think that's the case too, man. I think it's like, They've locked in their mind something like the 8th of December, because you don't want to be really releasing games much later than that, right? I mean, people are starting to do it, but it's very unusual. And I think you're 100% right that they've gone, okay, like, we don't want it to be like dragging on beyond Christmas, and it would probably be an extra week or something, so it'd be mid-December. But are you thinking about picking that up, or? I
still need to beat the first one. I liked what I played of Golf Story. It's the first game I bought on the Switch. Other than owning Mario Odyssey's part of the pack, like that's the first probably the first game I played, to be honest.
Ever?
Yeah. Ever. No, on the Switch. On the Switch. But yeah, so a lot of people were very disappointed by the showcase in general, but I think that getting a whole bunch of release date news, while not super exciting, is cool to have. So
Like, I'll be getting this day one, and I'm sort of fascinated to see how, like, and I don't take this the wrong way, how much of a mess this game is going to be, right? Because Golf Story is very tight. It's very simple overall, and very sort of like Game Boy Advance-esque, inspired by, like Mario Golf, all those kind of games, right? This game like felt like first game's big success. All right, let's fucking do everything we have it on the vision board, right? Like, they've got 6 sports at least. They haven't fully confirmed it in the latest trailer, which I thought was a bit weird. They talked about all the sports, but they didn't. I don't think they ever explicitly said there's going to be 6 sports.
I got the impression that golf is still like the central run through sport, and everything else is kind of like it's big parts of the game, but is not like the through line sport part,
Yeah.
That's I could be wrong, but that's the impression I've gotten from what I've read and things like that.
No, I think that's right. But there's a big element in like the other sports. Like, I think you can at least say that, right?
Yeah.
And then you go through the actual listing. So they're like, okay, play and master 8 unique golf courses. Rise through the ranks of the Tennis World Tour. Start your own soccer team. Your sporting destiny is your own hands, right? Travel by train, helicopter, houseboat, right? Explore dungeons, abandoned ruins, and the mysterious wildlands. Raise your sporting rank and unlock new and varied other activities, right? And other sports. And it's got 4-player multiplayer.
Oh, okay.
Like, I don't know, dude. I feel like if they could pull this shit all off, this is going to be like a mad game. And Golf Story was amazing. It's an awesome game. So
they got the vaunted. I think it was the last game they showed off.
Yeah, it was.
So they got the good spot on the Nintendo presentation.
You think that Nintendo would have played some of it, right, before putting it onto like a direct? Do you think?
I have no idea. I mean, it's not far away, so I'm sure they've played it. So.
Yeah. So it looks like they've got baseball, cricket, fishing, tennis, volleyball, soccer, and golf. So it's like at least 7 sports that they're showing in the like graphic, and then like BMX. So 8 sports. Fucking, I'm super interested to see if this game is a mess or not. But anyway, I'm looking forward to it. I'll get it.
I can tell. No, it's I know Mike liked that game as well. So cool. Well, the next story is something that kind of came as a bit of a surprise, because I thought we'd known what we need to know about Street Fighter 6's controls, and knowing that when they kind of started to show more of the game a while back, they clarified there's a classic control scheme, which is just like your normal Street Fighter. You do your Hadoukens and everything like that, and then there's a what's called modern, which is like a simplified one, which they've tried out before in like Capcom versus SNK 2 and games like that, where you just need to like press one button to do a Hadouken, or very simplified controls. But this week they actually talked about a third control scheme called dynamic, which actually will allow people to just press any button and the game will determine the best course of, or will determine what to do. It's really crazy. So a quote from the director: in a normal fighting game, when people mash buttons, they will just do a lot of whiffs, because they don't know how to play the game, right? But we wanted something important and something that makes a difference happen by randomly pressing buttons. So, for example, if a character is far away, on the screen, they might mash any button, they'll do a Hadouken, for instance, right? If they're nearing an opponent, mash any button, they'll do a combo. It's kind of crazy, but you can still manually move your character around, and they say, and perform parries. I'm like, who's performing parries that's using this mode? But look, you can only use this mode in local play, so there's no, and obviously this is not a mode that's ever going to be used in any kind of professional play, but I kind of like, when I had a good think about it, I'm thinking this is going to be really fun for kids, just to see fun shit happen on the screen, and maybe get them interested in actually playing fighting games, so.
Don't get this wrong, but I think it's even funnier if you're playing at like Joe Jive's house. someone turns on like dynamic and actually starts beating him up, right? Just by mashing all the buttons. Like that's funny.
Yeah.
But it does. I think this whole thing teases out fundamental game design and flaws in certain genres of games potentially. But kind of like ultimately, there is probably, and it's interesting because what I didn't realize is so many of the Japanese, which like let's be real, most fighting games are all got Japanese directors. There's only like 2 fighting games outside of Japan that are of note, right? Well, there's probably more now actually with all the platform fighters, but I was actually surprised how inspired they were of like Sakurai's like kind of revamp of the fighting genre with like the platform fighters like Smash and the simple controls that were like actually themselves a reaction to like complex controls and too many inputs and combos and stuff like that. But I feel like this is not the solution. Like I do ultimately think Street Fighter is a niche mega hit. Like that's the way I would always think about Street Fighter, right? It's a game that shouldn't be mainstream, but somehow snuck through and has stayed a mainstream game. And I think doing this kind of stuff ultimately it's just like not a great idea, personally.
Even just as something you can just have as an optional thing for
Yeah,
even for accessibility.
I think it just kind
purposes.
of cheapens the game a bit, honestly.
I mean, of course it does. Like, I don't think they are pretending this is going to lead to any actual competitive play between even casual players. It's just a fun optional mode for people, you know.
Like, to me, it's like kind of like the inputs in the game and how you control things and everything like that is, to me, really inherent with the game. Like, I don't even like the modern controls that they've got with Street Fighter, like in this new iteration, right? Like, it's a little bit of like the debate to me with like Dark Souls. Like, to me, there's something inherent about that someone who's better than you will beat you 100 times out of 100 if they're in a different class. But that's the same as Smash Brothers, by the way. Like all of these kind of games, I think that's just inherent in the way the games are, and trying to take that away to me cheapens the skill that people gain. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, like if they were touting this as this is central to the game, you know, they didn't. First of all, they didn't even announce this when they announced the other two. So who knows? Obviously, if it was even a thing back then, or if it's something they've added in since. But
well, the way I found out about this was like I saw a thumbnail on YouTube of like someone just like was obviously mashing, and it's like this is. I think the caption was something along the lines of "This is the new power move in Street Fighter" or something. I was like, what's this mashing thing? And then I saw the articles about it. It's like.
I just know that, look, button mashing, Tekken is a famous game for people who've never played it. It's just button mash. And Eddie Gordo is the famous Tekken 3 character where if you button mash as Eddie Gordo and you're playing against another casual player, there's a good chance you might actually win. So I think that this, it's kind of like, and it's that audience. It's the people using this mode outside of for accessibility reasons. They're never going to probably, you know, like play this game at a serious level or anything. So it's more just, okay, they might have a bit of fun kind of thing. But I know what you're saying.
Look, because it does go back to this whole conversation about like Dark Souls and should I have like an easier mode? Why not? Because it doesn't affect anyone else, right? Like if they had 2 options, it's like whenever I play Fire Emblem, I always play it in classic mode. So that means permadeath, right? But to me, that inherently changes the game. Now, same as Dark Souls. I feel like if you made Dark Souls easier, like the hardest thing about Dark Souls is just like you can't just go in and bash your way through. The game will push back on you. So it's like, okay, I've got to like learn to like parry, learn to understand the class system, learn the bosses, learn the enemies. Like even fucking useless enemies can kill you really easily in Dark Souls, right? If you don't know what you're doing. And I always felt like you know, those kind of fighting games would always be in that category for me. And it's like, I don't know. I get what you're saying. Like, oh, if you just want to play it. But then what about the flip side? If someone's like, oh, I want to play these games, find it really hard to like get my head around the classic style. So I just go to dynamic straight away because it's easier to get up and running. But then you don't learn any good habits.
But at least they've got a middle step there now, you know. So...
Yeah.
I just think this is something that I think would be fun for kids, you know, like, and that's ultimately, I think, again, outside of accessibility, I think that, like young kids, I'm not, because, we...
Not sure if
we
they should be
bring
playing Street Fighter there.
I mean, Street Fighter compared to what games other kids are playing these days,
Minecraft? That's not too bad.
Yeah, no. Anyway, I think that this is a nice addition, but I understand why some people think it's not great for it. So,
all right. Well, I want to. Are you getting Street Fighter 6? I can't remember.
I hope to. I don't know if I'll be getting it launch. I don't. We don't even have a launch date for it. I don't think so.
Oh, but this is only local. You can't even play someone online with this style. No. That's pretty good that they've blocked that at least, because I want to beat you with the dynamic control scheme just to.
You probably would beat me with the bloody dynamic control scheme. Cool.
All right, cool.
All right, for our last story, you've got some awesome analog updates.
Yeah, so this is just like Update City. So Spiritualized 1997, which is totally not Kevstress, released 17 new cores. So I don't know, maybe I'll just quickly
17.
I'm not even going to quickly reel them off. There's so many other ones, right? Like
I don't even know half of these.
Well, I know a lot of the first ones, like the Atari 7800, Intellivision, ColecoVision, Magnavox Odyssey 2, blah blah blah. But yeah, like there's a whole bunch of stuff, right? And then also released Super Game Boy as a core. So that is leveraging his SNES core and then flicking in the Game Boy BIOS to create the Super Game Boy thing. And it's obvious that it's doing that because in the Super Game Boy mode, you cannot like save states or like pause the game, whereas you can in Game Boy. Also released a Sega Genesis / Mega Drive core and Atari 2600 core. So it's friggin' like where we're at right now, for everyone who's counting, pretty much everything Super Nintendo and before, console-wise, is pretty much done now. And just improving with time, which is pretty amazing.
Oh, Megaduck WG108. I've never heard of this thing.
I haven't heard a lot of these other ones.
Handheld game consoles developed and manufactured by a Hong Kong company. Jesus. Yeah, it's crazy that he'd go to the length to do this super obscure.
Well, I don't know who you're talking about. We don't know if Spiritualized 1997 is a man or a woman. We don't have any information about the.
I formally apologize for assuming Spiritualized 1997's gender.
Yes, but just randomly as well, Sweeney, on the Analog NT, which is the NES clone console, someone else had released all of these cores years ago for the NT. So yeah, it's just very random that like this person keeps getting around and it's got the same bugs as the official cores from Analog as well at certain points. So it's very not suspicious at all, but it's really cool. It's really
What are you insinuating?
I know.
This is an inside job? Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. Then also the Aussie, is it Aussie, this guy? AG23? I remember correcting it at one point. Because I think I was saying he was an Aussie.
You were saying your correction in a while back was that it was a New Zealand person and you said they're Australian.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember about this
because you're like, calling a New Zealander as an Aussie is like a massive insult. So
yeah. Can you explain that while I just double check that, Swinny? Of why that's an insult to our American audience? Because no, they're not even Australian or...
I don't know. I thought that's what you were insinuating.
I don't know why I thought they were an Australian, this person. It looks like they're from America. Anyway, so this person, AGG23, who's released a bunch of stuff, we mentioned them on the show many times, updated the SNES core. And I was excited about this because it actually now features PAL support. So games like Terranigma can run on it.
Awesome.
And also pretty much a full expansion of all the different chips except the MSU. And a whole bunch of other features, real-time clock. It's like so fully featured now, which is really, really awesome. And like it sounds crazy the lengths that he had to go to actually make this work. He had to like do a whole bunch of assembly code and then like build his own simulator to test certain things out. So he's getting full on, this guy, at this kind of stuff. He's like one of the legends of that community. He also had released a PC Engine core that now supports super graphics. So,
Is this AGG23? Is he like supported by Patreon or anything like that?
Yeah. So he has like an ability that you can donate to him.
Okay.
On
so
his,
AGG23. So go support him if you want.
yeah. So you can sponsor him on. I think GitHub is the main place that he likes the people to support him, and he's pretty good about it because he's building off work of others. And normally he's pretty much like, I'll go support those people, not me. So he's a pretty selfless kind of person, it seems. But that's really cool. And then also just with Analog itself, there's a firmware update for the Pocket. So they are continuing to update it. It still doesn't have the ability for me to take it onto the CRT. Unacceptable. No, it's fine. But yeah, they're constantly reiterating and updating it. Hopefully that update comes sooner rather than later. The other one is they do have the adapter set for sale. It's so crazy. So this is for TurboGrafx, PC Engine, Neo Geo Pocket, Color, and Atari Lynx, which in Australia, only the Atari Lynx, I think, was released. I don't think any of those other systems were released.
Don't think so.
So for us, like, I've not like nostalgia, but I remember seeing Atari Lynx in the store, right? Like at Tandy. I don't know if you remember Tandy, right?
I remember Tandy used to be my favorite store.
I love, you know what? A Tandy tangent. I just wanted to get that out because that's going to be the show title.
Yes, it is.
A Tandy tangent, right? I needed to say it correctly. That I also love that store so much. Like I was a super geek, love PCs. It's hard to explain to Americans what that store was like. Sort of like I don't even know. Don't know the US stores well enough to be able to. But it essentially had like a lot of PC stuff. But then also a little bit of console stuff, sort of.
And they were general electronics.
And general electronics.
For instance, I got like little handheld, like, you know, those handheld games that just have one, like a Pac-Man, Tiger handheld style things.
Yeah, Game & Watch that would sell there in the 80s.
I got the triple pack for Christmas of the Sierra, King's Quest 2, Space Quest 2 games and all that stuff. Like that was from from Tandy. And then Tandy died a death, unfortunately. So.
Yeah. And I really loved them. Like, it's one of my favorite stores to go to. And then at the same time, they were the biggest assholes there. The people behind the counters. Like, they hated kids in the store with a passion. And I was always like, one day I'll be able to buy anything I want, you assholes. And all this stuff, like, in my head. Right? But, when did they die? Like, 2011. Holy shit.
Really? That long? They must have had stores in other states because they,
that's totally defunct in 2011. And it seems like, so it's like Radio Shack. Okay, Radio Shack. So for people in the States, it sounds like Tandy was the first one, changed its business to electronics when it acquired control. Oh, so Tandy was the original. So Tandy was the original. Radio Shack came later and they acquired it. And Dick Smith was involved in this shit as well. In Australia, so he's a famous figure, infamous figure to some, I guess. Anyway, loved Tandy, but they would always sell that shit. So I saw the Atari Lynx, so that truly was a Tandy tangent. So I did see the Atari Lynx there, but if you're in Australia and you want to get these pocket adapters, you have to order all of them. So just say you've got like an Atari Lynx collection, Swinny, you have to order the adapter set, which is $99 US, and the current shipping to Australia just for that one single item is $89 US.
Jesus Christ.
And it's just this it's like this little tiny, fucking thing, right? So like that already is like what are we up to? That's like what, 190 US in Australian, and now we actually have to pay GST on these kind of items as well. So that's $312 Australian to get the Atari Lynx adapter if that's all you wanted. 312 Australian dollars shipped, right? But you know what the kicker is that I only realized today? The kicker is that also they're doing a final run of the Mega SG and the Super NT, right? So this is the final run of those, right? And I was like just playing around with the site as I do, adding things in my cart and all this other stuff, right? And what I found out is if you add the pocket adapter set, you cannot add anything else. You have to buy that just by itself. So if you go, I want to pull the trigger on the Super NT and I'll combine it with the shipping or whatever with the pocket set because it's so expensive to ship to Australia. You can't do it. You have to have 2 separate orders and get charged 89 times each time to Australia. How criminal is that, man? Is that not bad?
It's bad. Like, I know sometimes there's reasons why that stuff can't be done. I don't know, for instance, is that stuff stored in different locations? If it's not, and it's just like, okay, they just don't have the capability to do it because they don't have maybe the admin level to do it. That's bullshit. Regardless, it's bullshit. You know.
Oh, it's so bad, dude. It's like, I love Analog and I love a lot of the shit they do. I'll defend them a lot, but not for this kind of stuff. This is like anti-consumer shit, man. Like, honestly, they just need to increase the prices of the base stuff. Like, the Analog Pocket, I think, could easily be $250 and that would be fair price. And I feel like they could take some of the heat out of the shipping if they did that, right? So, anyway, that was the mini Analog update.
Oh, thank you. There's a lot of information there, and thank you for the updates. One day I'll get to take advantage of them.
Yes, yours should be... Have you got a shipping confirmation?
Nope.
Unbelievable. All right, well, see you in 2023.
All right. Well, that's the end of the main news stories. We'll probably just quickly wrap through some of the other stuff, just the headline level stuff, because it's actually been a pretty long show so far. So I will just say off the bat that... BioWare released another Mass Effect 4 teaser, or next Mass Effect, and it's coincided with the fact that I've been watching lots of Mass Effect Let's Plays, and I'm like, man, I really want to jump back into the Legendary Edition. And,
same.
You know what's staring me down the barrel with that?
What?
The full 3-game playthrough on the hardest difficulty, Insanity. So I'm gearing myself up. I'm learning the best builds. I'm doing.
Oh wow!
So I might start it next week. I don't know. So.
Yeah, I want to go back to that game as well. Not that I'll play it with you because you're antisocial. For me, we spoke about this before the show even started, but Animal Crossing New Horizon being the best-selling video game of all time in Japan, which is kind of an insane fact. That's an insane fact.
Thank you, COVID.
Yeah, well, it's not just that. That game was going to be a mega hit. Obviously, it was exacerbated by COVID. The flip side is, though, dude, that they couldn't sell enough Switches. So that game could have been bigger, right? Which is kind of mental to think about.
Cool. Next one from me, I guess this is the last one from me, is the Dark Souls Remastered servers are back online now. So not that long after, I think it's 2 weeks after they brought back Dark Souls 2 Scholar of First Sin. And just to remind anyone, the original PC version, Prepare to Die edition, the servers will not be coming back for that game. So you better upgrade to Dark Souls Remastered if you want to play online, unfortunately.
It's such more anti-consumer shit. I mean, like... I'm not necessarily fanging for this, but Gears of War is finally getting a movie. I thought that was interesting because I just read that Cliffy B autobiography, which they talk about a tiny bit. And I did read a bit about them looking to develop, because he was helping them develop a live action film.
And Dave Bautista's thrown his hat out there,
Oh, he has?
And yeah, he's thrown his hat out there and got commented on by Cliffy B. It's like,
that's going to happen,
be
right?
an honor.
Sure.
Well, he was actually DLC for, I think, Gears 5, where you could replace him as Marcus Phoenix. The unfortunate part, Batista's actually he's getting up there in the years, so I think they've got to pull the trigger now for that if they want him to be Marcus Phoenix. So
he's almost too expensive, though.
Look, Batista's a driven man. I reckon he'd do this as a passion project and probably a lower rate, to be honest. So
yeah, because these are all people. In the end of the day, if I'm like the biggest fan of Batman, and that will be a nice segue into the next thing, right? If there was some bizarro universe where they're like, oh, you can play Batman, like I'd be just like, oh, like whatever. You'd never be saying no to that. You'd always go, how do I figure out a deal to make sure this happens, right? Because it's like, yeah, I totally get that. You're probably right. And yeah, just on that, it was sad news. I was confused why I was seeing Kevin Conroy's image pop up all over the place. Because it wasn't framed as like that he passed away, but yeah, he passed away at the age of 66, which feels very young these days. I don't know. I feel like,
super young.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's such a massive loss. And, he was the iconic Batman voice for, the animated series, a bunch of the video games, a whole lot
Arkham.
of the animated movies. And, yeah, such a shame, man.
And he's still going strong. Like, I've been watching some of the newer movies that have come out in the last few years, which he's voiced. And to me, like, Batman, the animated series, so the one that came out in the 90s, early 90s, that show is way too good for what where it was getting released, who was funding it, how much money they had. It is honestly one of the best TV shows of all time. It's so fucking good.
Might be the best Warner Brothers produced show, I think. So
Yeah,
like,
it'd be right up there, man.
Yeah,
It'd be right up there. And still probably my favorite, like, adaptation consistently across the board. It's so good, man. So, yeah, Vale, Kevin Conroy, it's a bit of sad news.
All right, well, we are moving on to the final segment, which we're going to predict the nominees for the Game Awards 2022 Game of the Year. So we've talked a lot about this throughout the months, especially considering it relates to one of your resolutions into God.
It does. It does indeed.
And we thought we'd take a stab like we did last year. The actual nominees are getting announced in like 2 days' time, or a day and a half or something like that.
Tuesday morning for us.
Yeah, so we just got in there to basically say what we think those top 6 games are going to be, and it's not the easiest year compared to previous years. But we will start off with Mike because he couldn't make the show, but he did give us his 6 nominees. He actually gave me 7 games, and I told him one of them, which was Deathloop, was actually last year and nominated last year, and he goes, okay, cut that one. I'm like, well, he conveniently had 6. So I don't know if that was a joke because I didn't ask him to replace it. He already had 6 left over. So he's got some interesting picks. I mean, they're all good games, but I'll start to run through these. So Mike has chosen Elden Ring as a nominee, God of War Ragnarok as a nominee, Horizon Forbidden West, Return to Monkey Island, which is that's an interesting choice.
That's an interesting choice.
I talked that earlier. It's a great game, but interesting. I'll skip the next one. I'll come to it last. Norco, one of my favorite games of the year, but very interesting to choose it as a Game of the Year nominee.
Can you see the B-roll, Sweeney?
Yes. Norco very critically acclaimed, but
yeah,
like we're talking the amount of people that have possibly also played this game.
Look at this. 24.
Yes.
24
yes.
critic reviews. That's 0% chance of getting on this list. But go on.
For the most interesting choice, and I don't want to have Mike's obviously not here, right?
Yeah, I give you permission to slag him
No,
off.
but I'm saying yes.
Look at this. Look at this.
I do question, and he did mention himself. I do question Portal Companion Collection, the validity of that as a nominee for Game of the Year, considering it is a collection of 2 games that have been out for a long time. So.
And this is what I'm saying, that this dude has literally just looked at like Open Critic or Metacritic and gone, oh, what's some of the top games? Elden Ring, Ragnarok, Norco. Oh, yeah, Portal's up there, right? And then just like added in Return to Monkey Island. Seriously, dude.
I wish Mike was here, so we'll hopefully he's here next week, so we can actually kind of like question why he chose a port.
This makes this is almost like he's trolling me, because I'm still pissed that what was the fucking thing called? It was best of, what do we call that segment?
The big year in awards.
No, not that. When we would go back and look at other years, like 2011.
Game of some other year.
Yeah, Ghost Story. I was just thinking Ghost Story, but I couldn't remember what it stood for. That I'm still pissed that Portal 2 is not in our 2011, right? The fact that he's put this in for this year, which makes zero fucking sense. They didn't add anything to this. Like, you could only argue this if they've added stuff significantly, I think, right? To Portal. I don't know, update the engine for the original Portal game and all this other stuff. And you go, okay, maybe on some bizarre universe. This has only been released on this platform, Switch. This is bullshit, man. He's picked this from the fucking list, I'm telling you.
There's actually a lot of re-releases or like upgraded re-releases that are in the top list of Metacritic. You've got your obviously exactly. Persona 5 Royal just got added to a bunch of stuff. But Stanley Parable has much more validity with the new content they added.
Oh yeah, I agree.
Anyway,
that's what I'm telling you. That's what he's done. He's like just looked at this list and going, Portal's up there, so I'm gonna add it in. It's the stupidest thing you've ever seen.
I would love for Mike to somehow get the most. I would just love it because it would just be the most bizarre.
It's impossible. Because he's already lost on Portal. Portal will not be... that would be... Dude, so the way that the voting works is they've got like 100 outlets. They have to submit unranked, right? What is their like top 5? This is the interesting thing. Game of the Year for them is top 5, right? So that actually, to me, made it like, oh, okay, I can understand why these niche games get excluded, because if you know how we've done 6 games, if you only asked to do 5, you're like, oh, okay, well, I'm probably going to have to drop one of them more edgier ones, right? But every outlet's doing that. So how the fuck is enough outlets saying top 5 Portal? Hear me out. Now, hear me out. I reckon Portal Companion Collection on the Switch should be Game of the Year for our outlet. It's the dopiest shit. It's the most Mike thing ever. It's so fucking dopey. It's like he doesn't really believe it, surely.
Well,
it's Elden Ring, God of War Ragnarok, Horizon Forbidden West, Return to Monkey Island, Portal Companion Collection, and Norco. That's his list.
Yes, it is. Indigo, would you like to share your 6 predictions?
I don't know how you want to handle this, Sweetie, but do we want to read out our? Do you want to read along my predictions and your predictions? Let's go. First game.
Okay.
Elden Ring.
Elden Ring.
God of War Ragnarok.
God of War Ragnarok.
Horizon Forbidden West.
Horizon Forbidden West.
Stray. Xenoblade Chronicles 3.
Xenoblade Chronicles 3.
Tunic. So we both independently came up with the exact same 6 games.
I wish I had a notepad thing that I opened that I typed in. I wish I'd saved that file so I could show you like the time that I saved it. It was like would have been like 11 a.m. this morning or something, right?
Yeah.
And during the day you added yours in and I saw them. So I shared. I'm like, wait, like mine was in a different order, but it's the same 6. We nominated this, which is crazy because there's so many that you could. There's like you could swap one or two with another game.
Oh yeah, easy.
There's so many possible combinations. So look, I'm happy to. I've already got one in mind. If you think,
no, keep it. It is what it is.
But then not like, do you like just for the sake of there could possibly be an actual winner?
No, but I don't think it makes. I don't.
I'm just saying.
Say I'm competitive. Jesus Christ.
I'm not tied. For instance, Xenoblade Chronicles 3. I'm not 100% tied to that one. I'm happy to swap it in a game.
I wasn't tied to it either, though. I had another game. I was flicking back and forth.
So how about I swap one out? How about I swap
it out?
I'll swap.
Can I show this image, or is there something that I can't show in this image?
I don't.
The screenshot that you sent me.
No, you can send it.
I don't see. It looks like there's nothing in there that's dodgy.
No, it should be fine.
So this is what you sent me. I thought it was so funny. I was like, fuck off. Because I already put it in. I didn't look at anything that you had. And you'd obviously written in a notepad and then checked it and gone, oh, shit. You can even see it's a different order as well. On some
I even had God of War Ragnarok at the end because I was going to, like, do a stupid bit where you didn't think I'd actually said God of War Ragnarok.
You want to win.
Yeah, but it was a bit, right?
Yeah,
so that's why I had it last.
Sure. I don't believe your bits anymore.
Of course, it's not like I'm doing world-class comedy here. So, look, I'm going to swap one. I'll swap one, right?
No, you can't swap it. It's locked in now.
Oh, don't you want a bit more fun?
No.
Possibly.
I don't want any fun.
Wow.
Now I'm going to be... No, because I'll be pissed. If I win by you swapping, it's a hollow victory. If you win, I'll be pissed because you didn't actually pick that. So, no, you're not switching.
Okay.
Let's handle it different. No. I got a better idea than what you've got. I got a better idea. We both pick an extra game.
Okay.
Now, if that game wins, then kind of we've got the deal break, the tie. See, that's a better idea, is it not?
Well, I was more a situation if we get all 6 right.
No. All right. Well, if we both get all 6 right, there's only one perfect answer. All right.
Do you want me to say my extra game then?
Who wants to go first?
I'll go.
I fucking swear to God, if you pick the same game as me. All right, I got it in my head. I
was going to say Neon White.
Okay, cool. I was going to say Bayonetta 3.
Okay.
All right. Okay. So that's to swap out Xenoblade Chronicles 3.
That's what I was going to swap.
Yeah. I was going to swap the same. All right, cool. All right, Bayo 3, and then yours is Neon White. Which
is crazy because that's 3 indie games, which is insane. But
that's why I didn't go with it. That's why I didn't go with it.
I know.
I thought a lot about this actually, and then I also thought about the fact that it's 5 games. And I'm like, oh, fuck, man. I feel like that is 5 games. It's guaranteed to be Stray, one of them. Because the fucking idiots will be in a room together. Oh, no, Stray. And I also checked who was nominating. And then I went back to see what their reviews of Stray were, and it was like 5 stars, all of them, like 5 out of 5. I was like, fuck, man. And they're like breaking new ground with games and all this shit. I'm like, how's it breaking new grounds? It's like a cat game. Like, it's a really decent game. It's not like there's nothing more to it, right?
Screw Alley Cat. This is the first game ever that you play as a normal cat.
Oh, man. But yeah, that's really funny, actually.
I'm
not very strong on the Bayo 3 thing, but I don't know, I got a seeking thing. Neon White, I just don't think it's got enough buzz. That's the only reason why I was like not going for it.
Look, I didn't have it in my 6, so as in like I swapped it in, but I think the reason being is I just heard so many people talking about it at the time. So I have a feeling it's probably might be the 4th or 5th game on a lot of people's lists. You know, so
I think if it was the 6, if they had to nominate 6, I'd be more inclined to think Neon White's gonna like be there, because I could imagine it being the 6th game for a lot of places. But like, also, by the way, Horizon is so lucky to be out in this year. I think like that's gonna be one of the weaker ones that, to me, really did sneak through. Like, if you had more big mainstream, like if you had a Mario game come out this year, it would have been in the 6 for sure.
You know what game I considered, but then I thought better of it?
Kirby?
No, not Kirby. Gran Turismo 7.
Nah, no chance.
Purely based on
No chance.
The fact that it got reviewed by so many people and had a generally high score. That's the only reason. And I'm like, I don't think it will, but I'd considered it, which I never would have thought of before. So
I think Forza Horizon 5 would have been a chance this year. I think it would have been like maybe the only time ever that a racing game could have been in the game of the year. You know why? Like, I thought about that as well. So I shouldn't just say, nah, no chance, because I did think about it as well. The reason is because I do listen to a fair few podcasts. People have actually turned on that game because of the economy. So it would have been discussed in the room. It would have been like, because this is an editorial decision. Like, the whole place has to agree. Someone would have been like, fuck that game. That's got a shit economy. That's bullshit, blah, blah, blah. And then it would have just turfed it. There was another game that I had where I'm just like quickly checking. There was one other one I was like, oh, what was it? I'm just trying to. Well, I mean Rogue Legacy, but.
it's.
By the way, Mike has definitely gone through the Metacritic 2022 list, because Deathloop's on here. That's why, dude, he's definitely done that. 100% he's done that. Like, the other one, sorry, was Shredder's Revenge. I feel like that wouldn't shock me if that's in there. You know what game will shock me? And I'll actually be pissed if this game is in the list. Last of Us Part 1. Could happen. But that would piss me off if it does.
It could. I also considered Cult of the Lamb.
Yeah, I had that on the list as well. Yeah.
But it's weird. It says Metacritic's only got 8 reviews. It's really weird. Maybe that's it's the PS5 version I'm looking at. So.
Yeah, no. If you check the PC and the Switch, it's got a lot more.
So I did actually have that, and maybe that's actually because that had more buzz than Neon White. So and it's also more recent. But
I'm kind of like off the indie games, because going through the list of who's actually submitting. Like, some of these outlets do like 30 game reviews a year. Right? It's like LA Times is one of the LA Times and IGN are both like submitters. Like, LA Times, what the hell? Who's going to be judging at the LA Times? Like, what the fuck? It's so weird.
I have no idea. Do you happen to know how are the other nominees selected? Are they just the Game Awards committee does that stuff?
Oh, so yeah, I've read through all the rules. That's why
I'm talking like best RPG or best, like the other.
So all the categories, apart from esports and accessibility, right? Esports and accessibility, they've got different panels. Yeah. For all the other categories, racing game, RPG, blah, 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 every single category, at least according to the website, they are asked to give a top 5, but not in any order, which I thought was really weird.
So it still comes from the outlets, does it?
Yeah.
Okay, that's... Yeah, all right.
But this is the other part that I'm not really understanding, because I'm like, well, wait a second. is it just like whoever gets the most votes to come in wins, or
Well,
how does the tabulation win?
Well,
work,
yeah,
you know?
it's like the reason being is okay. A smaller game like Norco, right? That is well acclaimed, but is a smaller game. I'm like looking at that. Okay, what chance could that possibly be nominated for best writing, for instance, right? Because we have games that are indie games that get nominated and stuff, but I'm like, that's a game that not many people talked about, but obviously reviewed well and is known for its writing. But I'm like, so yeah, it's interesting. We'll see. We'll see how it all plays out. I mean, honestly, this shit means nothing, but it's just fun to predict, you know.
Oh no,
Like-
exactly. It's very fun. It's very stupid, but very fun.
And I guess it doesn't mean nothing to the developers and people receiving the awards. You know, like I don't want to take that away. It does mean stuff to people. But
Yeah,
cool.
because like just quickly, because I'm just triple checking this to make sure I'm not getting like the facts wrong, because I'd hate to do that. It is like what I was saying. It's, can you see this at all? It's maybe a bit too small.
I can, yeah.
So it actually has, yeah, like this is really weird. So how the nominees selected. So it goes, each voting outlet completes a confidential unranked ballot based on the collective and diverse opinion of the entire editorial staff, listing out its top 5 choices in each category. Ballots are tabulated, and the 5 games that appear on the most ballots are put forth as nominees. In the event of a tie, 6 or more nominees will be announced in a category. I do think this is really weird that it doesn't say the game award, like the game of the year is 6. Because surely it couldn't just be the last however many years they've had ties, right? That doesn't sound right.
No, I mean, like
That would
the
be
Oscar
shocking.
does different stuff. Like they have different amounts of nominees for different categories, don't they? Like they used to have more
they have
motion
10
pictures.
for
Yeah.
the Oscar for best film is now, I think, 10 nominees.
Man, I could not tell you any Oscar winner from like the last 6 years.
I can.
swear.
Will Smith.
Yeah, okay. All right, I'll give you that one. I'll give you that one. I'll give you that one. I'll give you that one.
Now, can I just say how stupid this is, though? The way they've written this. How are winners selected? Winners are determined by a blended vote between the voting jury and the public fan voting, right?
Yeah, I knew that.
But when does it say that? How do you? It doesn't actually say when they vote, the jury. Does it go back
mean-
to them and say, "Oh, these are the nominees, so you have to vote"? I guess that's how it would work, right?
I don't know. I'm sure it's just a jury of the Game Awards, people that might have representatives from major outlets on there, but yeah.
And this is what I was also stating, that the games eligible for the Game Awards this year must be available for public consumption on or before Friday, November 18, 2022, right? Now they're going to announce what the games are next week at the start of the week. So then they won't count like any other games.
I wonder if, you know, it's not that common these days, but you know how sometimes games have a staggered release depending on region? Maybe that's why.
I don't know.
Oh,
I think
that's
most games are in before like December, right? So something like Callisto Protocol would be interesting. If that's like somehow like a major hit, that would have to be considered for next year's Game Awards, which will feel very weird because it's like, wait, did that come out? Like, when the fuck did that game come out? So, like, technically, Halo Infinite would be this year, but I don't have any buzz around that though.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to predicting the other categories. So I think...
Well, we're going to predict every category this year.
Yeah, I think we're getting the nominees for everything.
Yeah, I don't see a
this
reason
week.
why it wouldn't be.
Yeah. So I guess we don't have to do it next week, but as long as we obviously do the predictions before the show, but we'll come up with... well, we're doing them all, aren't we? So we don't have to
And
come
I'm
up
going
with
to... Yeah, I'll be taking the day off that day, so I'll be streaming that. Are you going to be watching it as well? Or?
I'm sure I will. I don't think I have it officially booked out, but I will attempt to do so.
Well, you better be there, or else I'll just slag you like I've been slagging Mike off on the whole show.
Poor Mike. All right, well,
Cool.
Thanks everyone. It's a bit of a beefy show. It's a very beefy story in the whole Mick Gordon stuff, but I think you need to kind of like really cover that stuff
That's true.
for a bit of context. But so next week, I guess, look, hopefully Mike's back on the show because I'd like to actually talk about Ghost Song. You know, I couldn't talk about it last week because I was waiting for him. So
Was he not on the show last week as well?
No, he missed last week. So
Oh, did he? Oh,
yeah,
shit.
that's why I kind of wait.
Oh, yeah,
There's,
that's right, yeah.
there's cool stuff to talk about Ghost Song, but I'm like, well, Mike's going to talk about it. So, cool. And anything from you next week, or is it
Don't know what's coming up. I don't think so. I don't think I've got many other games coming that I'm buying. I've got a lot of games that are already in my backlog.
maybe you'll get back
backlog.
to Mario and Rabbids or something. I don't know, depending on how
Well,
your
now
God
I'm
of War
almost
adventures
debating
go.
to play Last of Us now that you've played it, because then if I play it, we could all talk about it.
Cool. That'd
After
be cool.
11 years since it's come out or whatever. Cool.
Awesome.
That does it for me.
All right. Thanks, everyone, for joining this Tandy Tangent-related episode. And I am not going to hold my hand up, unlike last
don't
week,
even
which we
mention
cut
it.
out.
Don't
I'm
even
not going to
mention
mention it.
Don't mention
I
the
am
war.
going to... don't mention the war. All right. Thanks, everyone, for joining.
All right.
Catch you
Bye-bye.
later. See ya.